Today I want to talk about parameters. Parameters are, well, on one hand, they're an extremely convenient thing, something that's kind of nice to use. But then on the other hand, in a professional world, they are a very important thing to be able to have. So when I first was started using Fusion after poking around a little bit, I was really happy that, well, one, that they existed and they're actually pretty good. There's a couple things I'd like to change. I'll get to that later, but they do exist. So here I have this just a simple little I-beam, and I'm going to use this as a vehicle to explain a few things. So you have something that's already done, something that is not, let's say, um, a very unique and one-off type part, something that you're going to end up maybe making again, or maybe something that you're prototyping and you want to be able to make some changes to it quick and easy and be able to see your changes and this is kind of important, to be able to see your changes happen quick enough to where you can tell the difference between what it was and what you just did to it. For example, if I wanted to change, a small diameter and say, this circle right here, I'd go find the sketch, I'd edit the sketch, I'd come in here, make the change, and then I exit out, and then I look at it, and I'm looking at the circle here, and I'm like, did it really change enough? Do I want to open up more, or what? So you want to be able to, like, let's say I could make a change right now. So that's what parameters are going to do for us. We're going to be able to easily modify certain elements, not all of them unless you wanted to go that far, but just the ones that are critical to the main idea of the part. So, and again, as another example of that, this I-beam it needs to be so long. We have a length on this. We maybe have a web thickness. Maybe the flanges up here, maybe they have a thickness and they have a width to them. Maybe those things are going to change. Maybe they're not going to change. Maybe we say, you know what? We've determined that the wall thickness on these models here, they're not ever going to change. But what will change is maybe these lightning holes here. Maybe we want to make them different sizes and have different spacing to them. So if you don't need to know about all the lengths and widths of everything else, then I can have a user parameter that just says number of holes, diameter of holes, spacing of holes, and then you can come in here easily and change that. Another thing, though, with that as well is that anybody could easily be trained to do that themselves. So say that we need to send this part out pretty quick. You could have your main design team that actually makes the models, but then maybe I don't necessarily want to say sales, but somebody along the line could just pop in and they could have been trained to go in and just change the parameters and then shoot it down to the shop. So before we get started with parameters, I wanted to talk about formulas. So formulas and parameters, they pretty much kind of sort of go hand in hand, but they're a little bit different. So let's say I add a dimension to this, 5 millimeters, as, per norm, right? And then I have another circle over here, and I want it to be the same, right? And I could go ahead and let it be 5 millimeters. But the problem here becomes, what if I want to change both of these? Well, I can change both of them, but what if there's 100 of them? What if there's several of them, whatever, and I don't want to do that? So a common theme in all CAD programs is to associate this one here with maybe one master. And just to be a little bit more particular, I usually make this one be the one that's, let's say, over on one side, like say the main one at the top over on the left or whatever. This is the one that you edit and then it cascades down and changes all the rest. So I want this one here to be the same as that one, okay? And so now when I hit enter, it will be the same. And if I change the first, it will change with it. But what I want to point out before we go on is this right here. The D27, we're going to see something like this in just a second when we get into the edit parameters section. So this is for dimension 27, and all they're saying is this is the 27th dimension that I've created in this sketch, okay? More on that in a minute. So hit enter there. Now, if I come over here and I take this and I change it to 6, then as you see, this one changes as well. Change it back to 5, the other one changes. So that's fine. That's formulas, and you get a little formula function symbol over here. Now, if you want to do the same, let's say to these other ones, you can do the same thing, right? But let's say that these two over here, let's say maybe it needs to be something like this. They need to be the same. So again, I can come over here and I can pick this dimension 29. They're now both the same as each other. But what if I want this one, say I change this one here to 6, I want this one to always be twice the diameter of this one here. So you can do that as well, and that's a piece of cake. So you take this one and you say, I want this one to be the same as that one right here, dimension 27, and then just simply say times 2. Okay? And now because this one is associated with this one, and that one's associated with this one, everything should go all hunky-dory. There, see? So now if I change this one back to, let's say, well, how about 5 and 10? If I change it to 2, then they're 4. If I change it to 10, they're 20. See? So that's, you know, these formulas you can write, and you can make them pretty much as long as you want them to be, and you can associate them to different types of things, okay? So there is the key word, I think, right there is association. So that's what this is going to be all about. Just like these right here are associated in some fashion or another to this one right here, with parameters, we're going to make a name. We're going to actually give a nice human name to something, and then we're going to associate this with that name. But that name, it can't be just a name. That name has actually got to be connected to a value of sorts. Okay? So that's what this is about. So I'm going to go up here to modify, and then right down here where it says change parameters, this is where all of this is going to happen. So you click this, and what you're going to look for, or what you could look for here, is right under your model parameters, you got I-beam, and then down here are all the elements that you see down here in the timeline that you created. So for example, sketch 1, extrude 1, etc., right down the way. So then if I go here and I open up sketch 1, then you look over here, here is our dimensions in that sketch, and as you see over here, this is dimension 1 and dimension 2, and then so on and so forth throughout the rest of the tree. Okay? So if you wanted to, you could come right here and you could go 400, let's say. I hit enter, and then in the background you see just the webbing did get bigger. And so that's fine, but this is not really any faster, probably even slower than if I were to just go to the sketch and edit it. So we kind of want something maybe a little bit easier. Not that this was hard to do this here, but to try to find it. So imagine if we had something even larger, a bigger product, then you'd have to figure out where it was in the timeline and then come up here and click, click, click and find it. So what we're going to do, well, first we'll set this back, is we're going to come up here to user parameters, and we're going to add in our own, just the ones that we feel that we need, not a user parameter for every single dimension that we made throughout the whole entirety of the model, just the things that are, let's say, important to us. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with length, because I think that that is pretty much the simplest, easiest one right here. We have this I-beam, and customers want to buy it in different lengths. Everything else stays the same, okay? So we'll go ahead and we'll hit the plus sign here, and we'll just call it length, right? And we'll make it be, for right now, we'll make it just be 300 as it is. Okay, nothing changed, just a parameter called length. Now the thing that you have to remember to do here, the thing that you have to remember is just because we thought it really hard doesn't mean that the length of this part is going to change because we just specified a name called length. We could call this banana or rutabaga or whatever we want in here, and nothing's going to happen. It's not like it's keying in off of the word length. So then what you want to do is you're going to come down here, find the sketch that you want to affect, and then this value right here, just like we were doing with the formulas, you go to edit it. Now there's nothing here to click on, so you just start typing, and this is kind of the beauty of this. That was called length. So we just hit L and it says, hey, look, there's the length parameter. If you had many different parameters in here, if you type the first letter, then it'll alphabetize it. If there's just a few, you just hit any letter and they're all going to show up basically. So you hit this, it says length, and you hit enter. And now, just like when we did the formula before, we've got this saying that it is now associated to something else. Okay? And so that's great. So it's D2, dimension 2 is associated to length, if I could stay still right there. Okay? So we'll stop the sketch and we'll come back here. Nothing's changed because the value that we created, the value that we put in the parameters here is the same as what it actually was. So if everything's working properly, we should be able to come back here and let's go ahead and move this over here a little bit so you can see. And we'll change the user parameter to 400 and the webbing changes as before. So now I know that maybe this doesn't seem like it was that much easier, but now it's mainly because I didn't have to drill down through all the rest of this to try to find it. So now if I want to change the length, all I have to do is pop in here, hit this, and all is good. Now I think you see probably the obvious problem right here is the flange has got to kind of follow the webbing. So we're going to have to go and associate that with it as well, if you wanted to. Kind of makes sense in this case. So we'll hit OK here. And we'll get this straightened out here. Now, in this particular model, thinking ahead, and this is a good, really good design theory tip, I guess, concept, is talk with all your people and decide what the future of this model is going to be. And I say this tons and tons and tons. As an example, the flange on the top and the bottom here, they're both the same, as you maybe would believe that they always would be. For most people, that's the way you've seen I-beams, but they could be different. So purposefully, I made this as two separate sketches and extrusions, just in case. Okay, so we're going to mess with that in a second. But right now, let's go to the sketch. So this is the top one right here. We'll edit that sketch, and we'll change this length right here to length. Goes to 400. We're good there. Then we'll go to the next sketch. Change that to length. Now we're good. Now we got it. So let's say I want to make a change then. Here, let's move it down here again. And I'll go here and maybe we want it 600. Everything flows nicely. So this is how we're kind of connecting the dots here, making sure that everything works the way that we want it to. And then, like I said, you could end up giving this to somebody else in the company that maybe doesn't know CAD quite as well, and just say, hey, if the customer comes out, calls up and they want something of a different length, then go ahead and just change this value right here and then ship it. So then to keep this going, I guess the next thing we'll probably do, we might want to do, is change the flange width on, let's say, the top and the bottom. Should we call it top and bottom? Should we call it F1 and F2? Well, let's just say top and bottom. So we'll go here, change parameters, and we'll add a new one, and flange top. And right now, well, let's just go ahead and we'll just make this one be 60. It's they're 50, so you'll see a little bit of change. That's kind of nice to know that it took effect. And then this one here will be bottom or lower, I guess, or whatever. So flange bottom, and we'll make that one be 80. Okay, flange top, flange bottom, hit OK. Then find out where these are. So this one here is, if you look up here, this is Z, so this is going to be our top one. Edit that sketch and hit F, and now you have a choice. So we got flange bottom, flange top. This is the flange top, so pick that one, hit enter, come back out. Okay, then we'll do the next one. bottom one. Oops. There we go. Okay. So now we can easily change the length, the top and the bottom flange. Now, if we wanted to, we could change the actual thickness, the webbing here. Let's leave that alone for right now. And so I think what we'll do then is we'll go in here and we'll change, well, we could change the diameter of the holes in here as well. But I think what I want to do first is actually show you that we can add a parameter into just about anything. Let's go here to these holes, and we'll go to down here to the pattern, and just to show you what I got going on. For right now, I just have I have it being symmetrical, so it's a symmetrical spacing, and because I have a hole right in the center, kind of a sort of a weird common thing of mine that I do is you put a hole right in the center because you can snap to the center point, but then if you do a pattern on it and you got to go symmetrical, well, it always includes one in the middle here, and so I get 4 on one side and 5 on the other side, but you can untick a box, and so then you won't, so they won't be off balance. All right. Anyways, that's what you're seeing right here. So what I want to affect now is the distance right here, that which is actually the spacing of the holes. Okay, so we've got 10 holes, one scratched off, 32 millimeter spacing. Okay, so we'll come up here and the hole spacing, I guess we'll call it, right? And right now they're 32, so let's make it 40 so you can see them change. So there it is. Hit OK. Go to Edit Feature right here. Type in hole. There's our hole spacing. Now everything should move. Make sure that this thing does that it stays unchecked if you're doing that. There you go. Okay, so we'll come back here, change parameters. Get down there. Okay. Change it to 50. There you go. Change it to 30. Great. Okay. Next thing. So what would be nice about this, still dealing with the hole spacing, is if I could make this hole pattern here be the same as the length, or at least, you know, relative to the length of the total part. If I go back here to pattern and look here, and instead I change this to extent, so it'll go out to, you know, 10 out to a certain extent. Right now, currently the model is the beam is 500, so we'll say 250, and that would run the holes out, and it would still disclude that one on the end, so they'll be symmetrical, right up to what I think would be a good amount. Okay, so I hit OK, and there they are. So now let's say that that's kind of a nice distance. You can play around with it if you want it further up to the edge, but say that's good, right? But now if I go, you're probably seeing this already, if I go here and I change this to 600, well, it's not going to move along with it. So what I want to do is I need to kind of write a formula, but I need to write a formula utilizing parameters. So another wrinkle in all this. So I can go to Edit Feature, and then right here, the distance, instead of being 250, well, right now I'd have to change it to 300, right? So I'll change this to be what? Well, I'll change it to be the length, right? So this is the length, but I don't want it the whole length of the beam. I just want it, with the way the pattern is thinking is I want to go from the center to 1/2, one extent. It's kind of thinking it's going one direction, and then the other side is just symmetrical to that. So I say length divided by 2. You see? So then I hit OK, and then there's my holes. And now if I take this and I shrink it back down, let's move this down again so you can see. Change it to 500. You see the holes shrink with it, right? Go to, whoops, just a single click. 700. Everything kind of stretches out. Cool deal. But now, let's say though that, you know, as we stretch this out further and further, the holes, I mean, they're not really lightning holes any longer. They're just kind of like a couple little holes here and there. So we want to keep them a bit closer together. So you have a choice, and you can kind of play around with this on your own, and this is just going to be kind of for the sake of show and tell. But if you're going to add in quantity of these, maybe you're better off not doing extent, but maybe rather you keep the spacing and then you just keep adding holes yourself by hand, or you tell it to go to extent and then you just keep adding holes until the spacing looks okay to you. Except, I mean, these are lightning holes, so you've probably done the engineering on how far they're supposed to be in diameter, et cetera, and so forth, right? So whatever, you choose there. But here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to change it. I'm going to make a new parameter here, and this is going to be called hole num, because this is going to be the number of holes. But in order to do this, you're going to have to change this from millimeters, because you can't have like the number of holes is how many millimeters, right? So I'm going to have to change this to no units, so it's dimensionless, and then I can just put in the value. So right now we've got 10. Let's say we change this to 12. Hit OK, then we're done. But there is going to be a small problem with this that I actually wasn't going to show. I was just going to kind of fix it, but the model was already done, and so I wanted to show you this. So it has to do with the way that I built this again. So because I put the hole right smack in the center, and because I'm doing the symmetry and I have to uncheck the 1, here's what happens. Let me show you. So I've got this one at the end here unchecked, so it won't exist. And so then I take this right here and I change the quantity to hole num that we just did. So now it's going to be the number of the holes, and we increased it from 10 to 12. But now look what happened. This same, it's like the numeric value that you chose of which one it was became unchecked. Now because Fusion's the way it is, there's probably somewhere in here that you could probably figure out which one that was and tell it to always be the one on the end. But I don't know. So we're going to check that one back, and we need to subtract this one. But if we subtract that one, it's going to keep changing. So we've got to adjust the original sketch. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK to this to leave it be for right now. And then we're going to back up. So this is what I've came up with, and there could be different ways, but here's how I was able to address a couple different issues here. So we've got a symmetry problem where we're always losing one in the end. We would like the holes to grow with the length of the product from extent to end, and then be able to change the quantity of holes to whatever seems reasonable. We're going to skip the hole spacing for now. But I don't want to lose a hole. I don't want one hole to, chomp through the end like this. And I don't want to have to deal with the checking and unchecking of boxes. Okay, so here is a way to go ahead and do this. So we're going to edit this sketch here, and I'll need a couple things first. So first, let's, you just delete and start over, but if you click there, then you can get the coincident constraint, and then we can delete that and just sort of move this off to the side for a second. And then zoom out here, and I'm going to need a construction line. So we'll get that across there. We'll make it construction. And then we'll make it coincident to the center there. And then I'm going to take this, and we're going to move it way over to the side and stick it onto that line there. Now here's the big deal, is you take this and you make it a certain dimension away from the end. So what do you want for edge margins? So say we want to have 25. 25 seems like a good number there, nice and clean. And then you exit out here. So now what we have is that the hole has moved. I didn't blow up anything. Everything seems to be fine. But, we don't have enough holes. And it's based over on the side. So we'll come over here, we'll take this. Oh yeah, and all the other ones are shooting out the side because it's still symmetric. So we'll change it to one direction. So now they're just going this way. There's more holes because it's the same as the hole number there. And now instead of the extent being the length divided by 2, we're going to make it equal to the length. Okay. Now, thankfully, this updates just as you type in here, and you can see this. So it's going the distance. The distance is the length, but the length is from the center of this hole to out here, so it's offset a little bit, you see? But that's okay. We'll just go here and we'll say minus 50, or sorry, minus 25. I'm jumping the gun there. So if you say minus 25, it'll bring it right to the edge. And if we want to have that edge margin just like as we did on the other one, then we'll say minus 50, and now we'll have 25 on either end, right? We'll hit OK. And now it's starting to look okay. So you see the parameters that can get more and more complicated as you want to start kind of connecting this this part to itself, as in you change one feature and 5 others change that seemingly have nothing to do with, like, say, the first feature. So for example, if I go here and I change the length, oops. Now if I make it 800, same edge margin. The whole spacing is getting bigger in the middle, but we've got the same edge margin and it's going out to the extent. If I want to add some more holes, then I just say, how about 15? You see? We'll make it 900. Go off the screen a bit, not really. And then we'll make it be 25. More and more and more. Okay? Let's get a little bit trickier. So the last thing I want to do to kind of tie this whole thing together is I want to show you again with a little bit more complexity how these features, how the parameters can be used in many different areas and all these different areas kind of tied together. So, for example, I'm going to go up here. We're going to make a new parameter and we're going to call it thickness. And the thickness feature here, right now I'll just make it be 5 so I can get out of here and show you this. So I'm going to associate the thickness of the web and the 2 flanges to that value, okay? But then I want to take these values and essentially turn it into somewhat of a scale function. I want to have the value, the thickness of the extrudes to be in some form relative to the length of the overall part. So in this case, as you know, say this is a pretend company doing a pretend thing, if this beam were to get larger, maybe our engineering team has discovered or decided that the thickness of the part itself will change by a known amount over the length of the part. Okay, so let's just pretend that that's a true fact for a second, and we'll go ahead and play around with that. So now I could go into each one of these. I can go into the extrudes for each one. But what I'm going to do is I am going to go here and I'm going to take this 5mm thickness and I'm going to say that it is equal. So it's equal to the length, which you can see right here. It also pops up. I'm going to say it's equal to the length times something like 0.005, let's say. And so this is going to give me, if I hit enter, a web value, I'm looking over here, of 4.5 millimeters. Okay? Or I'm sorry, I keep saying webbing, but the thickness, wherever I place this, is going to have a thickness of 4.5. Okay? So now let's get that associated. So we have to go find the extrudes for all these various features. So the first one is going to be the webbing right here. So we'll edit that one. And this one is a little bit weird because I did it symmetrical. So it's 5mm thick was what I planned. So it's 2.5 on either side, but that's okay. We can live with that. So this is going to be the thickness parameter that we just specified. So now it says 4.5 in the middle there, right? But of course I'm going to say divide by 2. Okay. That gets that one. So you can kind of tell. Maybe it's a little tiny bit thinner. Then I'm going to go for the top one and the bottom one. And I'm just going to change that to thickness there. And then I'll change the next one. So here's the lower one. We'll change that to thickness. Okay. We got it. Okay, so now, theoretically, the thickness of this part is 0.005 of the total length. So if I shrink this up, Here, I'll kind of keep it on the side here. Take this length. Now if I change it down to say 600, when I hit enter, that should get thinner. You see? Okay, not done yet. Now the actual width up here should also change, because that's going to look a little bit strange to be a tiny little beam with huge flanges on it. So this should be pretty easy, because see, we already have the flange top and bottom defined. So all I have to do is change the parameter in here to something that's going to make sense. So if I look at it right now and I said, well, right now it's at the value of 60. So let's say that I want to say that it is the length times maybe 0.1. I think we'll still end up with, oh yeah, because it's at 600, right? So if that's an okay number, you know, I think that's a little bit big. So what if we said 0.08? There. So you see that? It got a little bit smaller down here. Now for the flange bottom, we'll say that it is the length times 0.09. And we'll give that a 0.1. 0.01. 0.1. Yes, okay, so you can see that they're different. So now I think that this can kind of be a good conclusion of this whole entire thing. If I hit OK here, we've now got a parameter for the holes, for the extents and the thicknesses, and if we change, I'll keep it at an angle here so you can see the thickness change. If I change the length, you think I'd learn. If I change the length to say 800, we should get bigger, thicker, and the holes will spread out. There you go. And we'll go to 1000. Oh, well, that's what happens when you go to 100. That's no good. So 1000. And then back to maybe 500. Excellent. So that is, well, a brief touch on formulas and how those work, but mainly parameters and how and why you can use those things. I really hope that you try to find a way in your day-to-day to use these, because I feel like once you get used to them and once you use them a little bit more and you get really comfortable with them, you'll find out that you can't hardly make any model without using some kind of parameter in it. It really is that important. One small last, not really a complaint, but just a wish, is I would really like it if a couple things. If one function that's in, you know, that other program that I talk about a lot, that they have, is the ability to turn off a feature. So it'd be really nice if I could go into my parameters and not only say that these things have a certain length or dimension, but are they active or not? So basically it's like down here, right here, suppress features, right? So could you guys, Fusion, create an add-in for parameters to, like a checkbox that says suppress feature, or at least the word suppress. So you could say that if you wanted to, you could just say is suppressed. And then if you want to come back into it, then you say turn it back on. Because maybe some parts, like this one here, maybe we don't have these lightning holes. Maybe I just want to check a box, okay? The other thing would be really cool is if parameters, like when you do construction geometry and such, put another little thing here. You hit the drop down, not all the parameters, just the user parameters. So if I want to, I can easily come back over here, click the down arrow, and then I could go and change the value. That would be super peachy. So that is it for this one. I think that was a little bit longer than I wanted to be, but hopefully through the magic of editing, we can get this down to something reasonable. Probably not. Anyways, thanks a lot.